There are nearly 20,000 murders annually in the United States.
Perhaps it's the weather, but the Pacific Northwest has become the notorious home of serial killers and bizarre crimes.
We're here to discuss those murders,
To try to understand the motives,
respect and remember the victims.
and explore the humanity of it all.
I'm Emily Rowney.
And I'm Alicia Holland.
And
this is Murder in the Rain. Buckle in, strap down.
Strap on.
Oh boy. Have I got a story for you guys today. It's a good one. I'm very excited about it. Here we go. January 4th, 1981, a woman places a call to 911, during which she stated, "My son has got a gun. He has a bad trip on some drugs, and he's been on a bad trip since Monday, and he's threatening to kill himself." That woman was June Stomps, and she was calling in about her son, Mark Stomps. As she was on the phone with police, Mark left the home and started driving away. He only got about a block before Gresham police officer Richard J. Riviera arrived on the scene, pulling him over. At gunpoint, the officer directed Mark out of the car. Mark followed the command, but then began approaching the officer. Riviera directed Mark to stop moving, but he refused. Continuing to walk towards Riviera, and surely the call of "he's got a gun" running through his mind, Riviera fired a warning shot, wounding Stomps. Wounding, but not stopping. According to police reports, Mark continued towards Officer Riviera before they began to grapple on the ground. Riviera pulled away, and that was when Officer Thomas P. Walker arrived as backup. The two officers backed away, weapons drawn. They demanded Mark stop moving, and as they did, Mark made a movement towards his side. According to the officers, they were in fear for their lives as it looked like he was reaching for a weapon, so they fired. Mark Stomps was shot with 4 of the 7 fired bullets and died. No weapon was found on Mark. The gun he owned and that his mother claimed that he had in his possession was left at the house. When tested post-autopsy, no drugs were found to be in his system. The officers were put on leave as the incident was investigated before being brought to a grand jury. No charges were filed. June Stomps, Mark's mother, who made the initial call, stated she was, quote, appalled by the decision of the grand jury because the police, quote, knew my son was unarmed.
Even though she told them he was armed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Interesting.
Little confusing would be
Very.
The start of that. So being only presented with what the police had to say about the shooting, there's no real way of knowing what actually happened. If this case happened today, in the age of police brutality awareness and body cameras, the case might have turned out differently.
Do they have the 911 call to see what she said on it?
I was only able to find a transcript. I mean, I'm sure if I filed something and spent a lot of money, they might be able to dig it up, but that was the actual transcript.
Interesting. Well, I would think they're pretty accurate, unless they went back to alter it, which...
Whoa, you're getting deep. Well, here's the thing. We're not talking about Mark's murder today.
Who are we talking about?
We're here to discuss the murder of his brother, Gerald Stomps, in Corbett, Oregon, 25 years later. Corbett, Oregon in 2009 wasn't much different than it is today. It's a small, unincorporated town about 18 miles east of Portland. If you've visited the famous Vista Crown Point via the scenic Columbia River Highway in the gorge, you've driven through Corbett and probably didn't even know it. Home to only 2,300 residents and one of the best school districts in the state, Corbett is a classic Pacific Northwest Americana town. On February 6, 2009, 60-year-old Gerald, or as he was referred to by friends, Jerry, and his 55-year-old wife, Hazelynn, a.k.a. Lynn, no one goes by their actual name, headed towards Oxbow Park. Oxbow Park is a large recreational park filled with areas to picnic and fish. They were headed there to meet a man they had met on Craigslist, who was interested in buying their boat. After meeting, they expected to continue on their way, fishing through the morning before heading back home. Married for 39 years, Gerald and Hazelynn Stomps had 2 grown sons, one of which, Jason, was a member of the Air Force. Jerry grew up in a small Oregon town not far from Corbett called Boring. Yes, Boring. But the 32-acre farm he lived on with his parents and 4 siblings filled his life with excitement and instilled what would become a lifelong love of the outdoors. 1967 was a big year for Jerry. Not only did he win the state track championship, he enlisted in the Army after graduating from Centennial High School. While enlisted, he ended up serving in the Vietnam War. During that time, he was awarded the Vietnam Service Medal, a Vietnam Campaign Medal, and a National Defense Service Medal before being honorably discharged in 1973. At 23 years old, he and Hazelynn were married. Jerry used his post-service time in a very typical Sandy River area way. He was a self-employed rental property owner. He had worked in a warehouse of a local grocery store. He had been a landscaper, and the classic retirement plan, he was a Christmas tree farmer. He went on to become an ordained minister, receiving a degree from the Multnomah School of the Bible, and ministered for several years. He would go to nursing homes to read to seniors, administer communion, and was a source of spiritual support for his community members.
Sounds like a nice guy.
Overall, pretty much. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary on that fateful Friday morning as they stomped their way to their usual fishing spot on the Sandy River. Once there, they waited for the man they had arranged to meet to find them and to discuss the sale of their boat. As they waited, two men approached the couple. A man they knew as Dave, described as a white male in his 40s, 5'8", with a medium build, and a second mystery man, his age unknown, but he was about 6 feet tall with a stocky build. As the men approached the couple, they engaged Jerry in a conversation that quickly turned confrontational. It didn't take long before a physical altercation began between the three of them. Shortly thereafter, a gun was drawn by one of the assailants. Whether she was pushed, thrown, tripped, or accidentally knocked down is unknown, but 5-foot-tall Hazelynn ended up falling off of the Gordon Creek Bridge. 19 feet later, she landed with a broken pelvis.
Yikes.
So again, don't meet people from Craigslist.
I found a nanny on Craigslist. She was great.
Do you still have all of your belongings and children?
Yes, and I still talk to her.
Oh, well, 1 out of 50 million. That's a good average. Her senses and memory rattled. She came to, realizing she was the only one that could save herself. She began to painstakingly crawl up the muddy ravine, each movement bringing excruciating pain. Not knowing if her husband was still at the top of the bridge or not, she continued to crawl towards him, seeking help for herself and perhaps for Jerry. 2 agonizing hours later, she made it to the road where she frantically waved down a passerby. They immediately called authorities, seeking an ambulance for her and the police, as Hazelynn now realized that the truck, boat, and Jerry were gone. Taken directly to Legacy Emmanuel Hospital, Hazelynn was treated for her fall and the injuries sustained. By that evening, she was listed in fair condition. Police approached her and began questioning everything that had happened that morning. Shaken from the fall and concerned for her husband, her memory was foggy. She was able to give descriptions of the men and a vague outline of what happened, but the swiftness of the attack made it all the more difficult for her to piece everything together. On top of that, Jerry was well known and beloved in his community. Who would want to do anything to hurt him? What did these men know that Hazelynn and the police didn't? Once armed with the basic outline of what had occurred, police and local search and rescue groups began the investigation with one question on their mind: where is Jerry? For 5 days, the Multnomah County Search and Rescue Team worked diligently to retrace the Stomps' steps in hopes of finding any clues that would hint at Jerry's whereabouts.
Before the interview begins, we just wanted to let you know that the person we interviewed for this episode chose to remain anonymous, so we've altered his voice to reflect that. We just wanted to prepare you ahead of time.
It's going to sound something like this. You know, beep boop. Traditionalist guy's voice. Okay. Bye.
So, in regards to the search, we actually have a special guest today, Levi, who was a member of the search and rescue team that actually participated in the search for Jerry. And we're going to talk about the search and what you found or didn't find and any questions we may have. So, hello. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So, you get the call. Give us a little background of what that looks like when, you get a call from the police that someone's missing and you have to go on a search.
Yeah. So it's a volunteer-based organization. So the way that works is whenever a search in our area, Multnomah County, is initiated, everything goes through Multnomah County. So the sheriff will get the alert, pass it down to whatever deputy or sergeant is on, and then activate us, and we'll meet up and head out.
Okay. And how big was your team? I mean, I know this was several years ago, but from your memory, how big was your team when you first went out looking for Jerry?
The way most searches, this one included, pan out is we'll usually have kind of a several pronged approach. The hiccup with having volunteers is you don't have everyone available all the time. So what we'll do is we'll get an initial team together, and if I remember correctly, you're looking at probably 10 to 15 people, and they just go out and start hitting high target areas. So the police are going to go to places that we are not able to go for warrant reasons, for legal reasons. They're going to be going into houses, and they're going to be going into neighborhoods and areas where if they have actual evidence that's already been located, and they're going to send us out to start walking down the roads to search the area that she said that she had landed on, and we're looking for anything related to this. So if we're looking for tire tracks that are going off of the road, we're looking for articles of clothing, blood, shell casings, really any sign that someone was here that's no longer here. And then as the numbers trickle in and as we don't find anything, it gets broader and it gets a little more detailed. So we'll send a team to do an evidence search where all of this is said to have happened. And that's a team hands and knees, shoulder to shoulder, scouring everything. And, we will have grid searches through the forest because maybe he got out and was injured and wandered away and didn't know where he was or where he was going. So
When you're first called to the scene, did you end up at Oxbow Park area, like where the fight had gone down?
So we met probably 200 feet from the bridge, and that's where we set up our first briefing to go over, here's everything that happened, here's everything we know, here's where you're going and why, here's who you're looking for, hand out pictures, here's what he was wearing. And it's obviously a case-by-case basis with this. This one stood out because it was not very typical, especially for this area. It's not a high-crime area by any means. And it was also... The big thing on our mind was how adept and comfortable Jerry was with the outdoors, which typically for us isn't a good thing. Some of the most difficult searches we've ever had have been for really avid campers and hunters and hikers.
They can get further, I imagine.
They can get further away. Or, someone that's out hunting, they're not following a trail in the first place. They get disoriented. And usually what these guys will end up doing is, I'm just going to get my way out of here. And they just walk until they can't anymore. That played on our minds a little bit more too, because it's, you always kind of hope for the best and plan for the worst. So we're basing this on this guy's still alive. And best case scenario is, he got out of the truck somehow. And what is he going to do if he's lost in the woods somewhere? He's going to walk.
So that original day, what is the average amount of coverage you're going to get?
So it's kind of a calculated decision based on what we know, where we're at, and what the circumstance is. So our primary kind of what we were basing everything off of was the road. The thought was he's going to be in the truck with the two assailants, and if he's not seen on the road, if the truck isn't spotted on the road, then he's obviously would have been off the road. Based on that, it kind of started with, let's focus on the road and the little valley underneath where Hazelynn was at. And then everything else was just coming off of the road. And we're doing grid searches, we're calling out, we're sending teams up because it's just thick forest, 10 feet off of either side, and then it's just the gorge.
So big question, what'd you find? Did you find anything day one?
So that kind of was the kicker, is we didn't find anything.
Nothing. No blood, no clothing.
There wasn't a single sign of life out there.
No casings, nothing.
Mm-mm.
And the dirt didn't have any,
tire,
looking like they had grappled?
There was no evidence that someone had fallen down there and climbed up. There was no evidence that there was someone that had been climbing or been injured, or signs of a fall or signs of a scuffle. Like you said, if there was dirt that's been kicked up from people trying to slide and push each other away. No, there was nothing.
So as you get into day 3, day 4, day 5, and you have these huge teams and still no one's finding anything, where do you guys go? I would imagine that would start to feel frustrating for you guys.
It does. And this particular story stands out for us because our narrative changed quite a bit as well, which is really, really out of the norm for this kind of thing. A typical search is, here's the person that's missing, go and find them. And the only time that that story changes generally is, a Coast Guard helicopter goes by and sees a clothing description on someone. Now we know what direction we need to go. Someone saw them on the trail yesterday. That's going to be what changes the narrative. And what kind of kept plaguing us this whole time is we kept getting different reports and different briefings coming from the deputies. So the deputies would show up and they say, okay, now the assailant, who wasn't a green sweater, it was a yellow sweater. Yeah, so this search specifically stands out because that story and that narrative just kept changing.
As Hazelynn continued to recover in the hospital, police continued to interview her, hoping anything would jar her memory, giving them a better idea of what happened. And then they did. While inquiring, detectives caught a break. Hazelynn's memory was coming back, therefore her story changed. No, she hadn't fallen, she remembered. Jerry had gone down a path with the two men who wanted to buy the boat before he screamed to her to run. Then one of the men chased her down and flung her off the bridge, and that was how she ended up breaking her pelvis. But there was something about Hazelynn's story that was not adding up. Search and Rescue worked closer to the property, examining the perimeter. At that time, they noticed a suspicious burn pile and notified the authorities. Not disclosing this information to the public, detectives were granted permission to go to the Stomps' 14-acre farm home to see if there were any clues as to what had happened to Jerry. Once there, the pieces started to fit, and pieces were what they found.
Ooh. This is exciting because
I
I
know,
never
you're
read
like
this.
so into it. You're so quiet.
I mean, I know the story, but I didn't know that.
Oh, it gets better. On February 13th, charges were officially brought to Hazelynn Stomps. First-degree murder, first-degree abuse of a corpse, and initiating a false report. So what really happened to Jerry? According to the prosecution, around the 30th of January, the last time Jerry had been seen, and a full 7 days before the bridge incident, Hazelynn killed Jerry. For the next 6 days, Hazelynn meticulously disposed of his body, burning, cutting, burying. Not only was she busy committing these atrocities, she kept her life and schedule going as usual, watching her grandkids, getting a haircut, making it seem as though nothing was out of the ordinary.
Women are better at multitasking, so we
I
say.
mean, that's a positive spin on that. At one point, Jerry's brother called asking to speak with him, but according to Hazelynn, he was, quote, out talking to a neighbor. Later that same day, when another family member inquired about Jerry, they were told that he was, quote, headed to the family's farm in Washington to feed the livestock. Just always not available.
On the go.
Getting a haircut and watching the grandkids. When police arrived on the property, they found the not stolen boat and fragments of what was clearly a human jawbone in a burn pile, which changed the direction of the investigation. From there, medical examiners took to the property to try to find any and all remains of Jerry that they could. But Hazelynn made sure to make this job difficult for them. Ooh. Pieces of Jerry had been burned over those few days, some parts of him buried. It is believed, due to the placement of the machine and the fragments found in its path, that she also utilized their wood chipper to help in the displacement as well.
Nasty.
There have also been persistent urban legends since this happened that in order to avoid fingerprints, that she maybe utilized the home's blender to dispose of certain body parts.
Oof.
To
so
keep
toes
prints.
or fingers. Or ears.
Ear prints?
Yeah, you can ear print. Everyone has a distinct ear print. It's true.
I just don't even
it's
have a comment on that.
absolutely true.
But one huge question remained. Why, after 39 years of marriage, would you not only kill your husband, but brutally dispose of his mutilated body? There are a few theories behind that. At her trial in early 2011, prosecutors pieced together that Hazelynn must have fallen while at home and broken her pelvis. Having a dead husband's body scattered around her property and probably falling while attempting to dispose of said body, she certainly couldn't call 911 for help. So she developed the elaborate plot. It's like, when people say you can always tell someone's lying because they go into like way extra detail about stuff. She really went overboard with the whole Craigslist and boat and all of that.
So did they check like email to see if she was interacting with someone from Craigslist?
Oh, I would assume so.
Yeah.
Like I again waited on the police report, didn't get it. Oops. But I mean, I would assume that they probably went through to be like, you've not talked to anyone from Craigslist, so this
Right.
person didn't exist.
I mean,
And
if it were
then-
me, I would have gone to the library and made another account and interacted with myself.
So that's a red flag, and I'll just store that away for later. But good that you have a plan. This theory of her faking the fall is actually supported by the terrain of the Gordon Creek Bridge, and I'm going to have Levi talk about that a little bit more.
The spot that all of this supposedly went down is really, really tricky. So it's a really steep ravine on either side, and there's a really pretty much non-existent creek during the rainy season. It barely trickles and otherwise is just an old riverbed. And it's really, we were surprised that it was a broken hip and not something more, because the way that this spot specifically under the road or under the bridge is at it seemed like it was a pretty lethal spot. It's nothing but really big, jagged boulders, no real good landing spots at all. You're looking at broken ankles, broken knees, possible lethal injuries at that point. And there was one spot that we saw that obviously had, by this time, a lot of footprints on it from deputies going down there and from other search and rescue personnel going down there. Not that there would have been anything in the first place to confirm whether or not that she had been there, because everything had been washed out with mud and rain and everything else. So there was one patch of flat, softer earth to land on that was right above the bottom of the ravine, and it was about the size, about the footprint of an adult person to land on. If you were aiming and jumping and you land on that, you're probably looking at a broken hip, maybe a little bit more, but it's survivable.
So if she had been thrown off the bridge by someone, it would have been miraculous luck to land in that one spot that wouldn't have killed her, basically.
I mean, it's miraculous to throw yourself off, to jump off, and still manage to make that landing and survive it.
As the investigation continued, officers scanned security videos of the area and never saw the vehicle that she described in the attack. A revolver, which was said to have never left Jerry's side, was found on the property. There were tracings of a fine mist of blood consistent with a close proximity shot inside of the barrel. That blood was tested and found to be Jerry's. Interestingly, Hazelynn did not take the stand at her trial, and her lawyer called no witnesses. However, he did argue about the burning of Jerry's body, that it wasn't a disrespectful act, it was normal for the area and common for the neighboring taxidermy property to burn bodies as well, sometimes even on the Stomps property. Again, their home is located like 15 minutes from my house, and they're much more country than I am, but it's not like they're so deep in the woods that
You guys don't burn your dead?
we don't burn our dead.
Whatever.
You know, it's like
Lame.
they're not so far out that like, oh, that's body burning country out there, you know? When it came to motive, the defense attempted to say Jerry's death occurred during an incident of domestic violence, that this was all an accident. However, I was unable to find any history of there being domestic violence in their marriage. The defense lawyer used the classic tactic of the victim is dead and he can't defend himself, but he had guns, so he probably had this coming. It is my understanding that Oregon doesn't require a motive in a murder case, but it does always help, especially in jury cases, to have supporting ideas of intent. Prosecution presented their own ideas about intent, and it came down to money. That Hazelynn had multiple secret credit cards and a line of credit, totaling to more than $54,000 in debt.
Was she at the casinos a lot?
I don't know what she spent it on, but that's a lot of money, especially out in Corbett. Like, I don't know what you're spending that money on. The idea is that Jerry found that the money was being drained from their trust accounts, and this potentially led to an argument, ultimately leading to his death. While the defense argued that they had plenty of money because of their properties and rentals, the Stomps' oldest son, who took over the finances after all this happened, stated that he was unable to keep up with their bills and had soon used all of their trust funds in paying them. In the end, the motive didn't matter to the jury. The evidence did. On January 24th, 2011, Hazelynn was found guilty after only 5 hours of deliberation. The jury believed the prosecutors that Hazelynn shot Jerry in the head at point-blank range, then spent a week disposing of his body before breaking her pelvis. There's no way of knowing what her plan would have been should she had not fallen. Would she have told loved ones that he left her? Would she have continued her lies of him being indisposed? Would she have skipped town? After the verdict, she was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years, when she will be 84 years old. The sad connections to this case don't end there, though. Richard Swanson was a tenant of the Stomps, living on one of their neighboring properties. During the investigation, he became an important witness. He had told detectives that he had seen smoke coming from the Stomps' property during the same time frame as Gerald's disappearance. On June 10th, 2009, Richard committed suicide via a self-inflicted gunshot wound. While there were rumors at first that this was connected to the case, it was quickly revealed that he had long suffered with mental health issues, including depression. Sorry to end on a bummer note, but I wanted to recognize Richard and really book in the Stomps with all the tragedy that has surrounded their lives since the 1980s. And that is the story of Hazelynn Stomps. And you're quiet.
It's sad. It's very sad. And I don't like that she gets parole.
I mean, the odds of her living to that and then being granted parole are pretty...
She looked pretty healthy when I was Googling her.
Well, 84 is kind of old for prison life.
I've seen in movies.
I've actually read
that there are older populations that are separate from Gen Pop.
Also, do you really think
Old
that...
pop.
Old pop. Do you really think that a judge or a panel is going to award her probation when it's
possibly it's all about, I accept that I did this, I am apologetic that I did this, they will consider it.
I don't see that happening. If she lives that long, I would be shocked if she was
Here's
apologetic.
to heart disease in women.
I mean, I don't wish her death. I'm just saying that's a long time to be in prison, and
it's pretty gross what she did.
It's horrific. Like, it's money. It's total. It's actually
someone
Fargo.
that you loved enough to marry. You're gonna put their body parts in blenders,
right? It's exactly Fargo. You did all this for a couple of dollars, huh? For a little bit of money,
don't you know?
You know, it's so sad. And that was your partner in the wood chipper there for a little bit of money. I love that movie, but it's the same story, and it's bananas because it's like, okay, you really can't talk to him. That's what makes me think, okay, is there strength to the domestic violence aspect? Because why would you not tell him, like, hey, I've screwed up and there's a money problem?
Oh, maybe.
I'm just saying that seems like, I don't know. I don't know how you get to that point where you not only have that much debt, but then that you're not able to say, like, hey, I've really screwed up here, and here's what's going on, instead of like, oh, I'm in trouble, I better kill him. So I don't know. But yeah, it's horrible what she did, and really makes me angry as someone that was watching the case, because it's a neighboring town and everyone looking for all his friends and family and the search and rescue teams that are out in like really treacherous terrain, risking their own health and well-being to find
Not alone
this.
the state funds.
The funding. I mean, there's so many assets. It's not just like, oh, she lied. It's like you created this really dangerous situation for a lot of people just to cover your own ass for nothing.
For what? Doing a poor job of it, too.
Right.
At least create a second email. Come on.
If playing an active role in search and rescue isn't an option, whether you don't have the time, you don't have the capabilities, it's not something that you're interested in doing, but you want to help out a great cause, or in the case of this year, they aren't actually hosting open recruiting because their numbers are high enough, you can donate your money. It's, like I said, an entirely volunteer-based organization. None of the searchers get paid. None of the advisors or administrators get paid. And the deputies and the sergeants and the actual staffed personnel that are part of it are also just putting in a lot of their own time and their own resources, knowing the value of the group and the things that we do. And it's personally so much more than just a civil duty. I've got lifelong friends and experiences and time that I never would have had I not been a part of this. And just a really invaluable group of people and a great organization. So you can donate your time and your money in many other ways. And the best thing is if you've got the resources and you're just not sure, reach out, send them an email, and just let them know, like, hey, I would like to make a donation, or I've got, this type of property that you could come over, and it's private property and you can throw your casings out and do evidence search training and practices, and we'd love to host you and anything like that. So yeah, if you've got any kind of inkling that you might want to help, reach out, send an email.
If you want to donate or check out any more information about the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue, you can go to mcsosar.org. Thank you again, Levi, for being here and telling us your experience, kind of painting a picture of what went down with the Stomps case. And thank you for all of your service that you volunteered to the people of Multnomah County.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Multnomah
County. You go next.
I'm trying to remember.
Sheriff.
I'm trying to remember.
In his possession. In his possession.
On his possession would have worked. We
No.
just said worse and haven't edited it out.
We haven't yet.
I'll get in the zone. Sorry. I'm getting there. I'm almost there.
Do you need a back rub?
Don't touch me.
Front rub.
You're about to lose your microphone privileges.
That's why I said that. I say. I can't put this on. It's making a lot of noise. I gotta put some batteries in this thing.
What
I think I might be going through like some sort of episode.
Right. Married for 39 years, Gerald and Hazelynn Stomps had 2 grown sons.
Can you do some angry journaling about this later? Probably. Did you see it happen? It was great. It just flopped over like a turd. It just like, fell out like a turd.
Married for 39 years, Gerald and
Synchronized snapping, bitch.
She continued to crawl towards him, not only seeking an ambulance for herself, but the police. Okay. Not only.
Jawbones are thick. Takes a very hot fire.
Wow, okay. Expert. Josh is concerned.
You know what my favorite kind of stomp is? A waffle,
Waffle
stomp.
stomp. I did that in your shower when you were gone. I hope you
You're
don't mind.
so sick.
That's how I learned about it. Her friend's scuzzy ex-husband, who I could not stand from the second I met him, was like,
She always knows.
I always know. And he was like,
That's
"Eh,
why
no."
she's single herself.
Exactly, because I know. And I'm like, you're a waffle stomper.
You waffle stomping son of a bitch.
It's been a while, so if you're interested,
while.
check it out.
Just throwing in some stains. Casual stained.
Final note. I also believe that
The Earth is flat.
I think
Surprise!
right?
It's been a
What was
while,
It's
you
been a while. I
dipshit.
couldn't remember, you guys. Come on.
Sublime's good too. That was a Sublime song, right?
No.
Oh no, that's
That's
what I got.
got.
Oh, fuck off!
Could you not take a dump while we're trying to record?
When I was little, I basically had a podcast with Julie called Bathroom Business, where we just dropped different objects into the toilet to make poop sounds.
How is that a podcast?
Because we had a recorder and we would record it, and we had like a talk show segment. Because my mom would get so mad. She's like, "Stop putting stuff in the toilet."
At the end of each episode, we drop something in. Whoever guesses it wins that week.
I want to be able to like sync this up, so we should all clap or something. I need like a sound like
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
But like together.
1, 2, 3.
Murder in the Rain is produced and edited by Josh McCullough. Written and hosted by Emily Rowney and Alicia Holland. Artwork by Jamie Costa. Music by Kai Pfeiffer at kyfifer.com. Check out our website, murderintherain.com, for additional information on all cases, a fun interactive map, and be sure to subscribe so you can receive our newsletter. Check out the Mad Props page for coupon codes from some of our sponsors. We love your reviews and seeing them on all streaming platforms, especially iTunes. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And suck my balls.
Please put that in. Check out what we're listening to this week.
Do you have an obsession with true crime? Are you intrigued by the mystery and the rabbit holes surrounding unsolved cases? And can you appreciate the snark and humor of an exhausted mother of 2 young children? Then you should click subscribe to Naptime Nancy podcast. Throw on some Baby Shark for your kids or pet or partner. Slide your headphones on and join me as I talk some true crime during nap time. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Audio Boom, and other listening apps.